worlders, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma. This wrap-up video is going to be a little weird, mainly because I only read one book in July. So my July wrap-up is really just going to be a book talk about One Last Stop, but I also wanted to bring you up to speed for my wrap-up bingo game that I've been playing all year. I will link January's introduction video up above, but basically I am trying to get bingo based on the different prompts I have. I just went through and looked through all the books I read this year and matched up any books that would fall under this since January. So when we left the board in January, I'll insert a picture here, we had a retelling covered and we also had a contemporary covered. And then we moved into February and I was able to cover another square in February. I'll pop up the new picture, but that was a 5-star Buzzwordathon book, which The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan, I believe is her name. I don't have the book near me. Was a 5-star Buzzwordathon book, so I was able to cover that with there. So we're kind of in the same place when it comes to bingo. I can get it in two directions with where I'm at. Then we move on into March, and I actually did not finish a single book in March. I did read in April, but April would not have covered any of my bingo squares, but May did. And May covered a middle grade book because I did a read through of the Harry Potter books, so middle grade, because my students were obsessed with Harry Potter this year. And they kept talking about it and I wanted to reread it. I do want to put out a statement that I don't agree with anything J.K. Rowling has said in the past regarding any part of the LGBTQIA spectrum, and all of the books that I reread were books that I owned, so J.K. Rowling did not get any money out of me rereading these books. And yeah, that is all I have to say about that. I actually have to change my camera battery, so I will be back in a hot second. Alright, I'm back. Sorry, I just had to change my battery. But yeah, so I was able to add one more square to the board, so we now have right here, you guys have a better picture up too, but I'll show you here too. We need 3 going diagonal, 3 going horizontal on the 4th row, 3 going vertical on the 4th column, and 3 going, I can never remember, 3 going vertical on the 5th row. I think that's the only places, right? Oh, 4 also going horizontal on the 3rd row, and 4 going horizontal on the 5th row. So we are not much closer to getting a TBR bingo, but yeah. So normally I do like a shorter recap on how I feel about my books during a normal wrap up, and I also would go over my stats for the month, but because I literally only read one book in July, we're just going to do an in-depth book talk. At the end I will also add the bingo square because this does hit a bingo square, so I will add that at the end of the book as well. So like I said, I did read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston in the month of July. Yeah, that's the month we just left. The month of July. Before I even really start this though, I do want to just talk about some trigger warnings that I have found from reading this book. That way you can know off the bat if you want to read them. I do have to read it off my phone because there's actually quite a few, and these are ones that either I picked up on or I did find online and just want to let you guys know about so that you know, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So the trigger warnings: drinking, smoking, depression, anxiety, memory loss, family estrangement and loss, homophobic violence, and childhood neglect. If you feel like I missed any, let me know in the comments down below. I can always pin them as well. But yeah, and I will be looking from time to time at my phone because that is where my notes are for this book talk. So this book is about a girl named August who has lived in a bunch of different cities but never felt like home, and she moves to New York City. She moves into an apartment that already has 3 roommates in it that are very like family, found family kind of, and she is on the subway going to school one day and she meets a girl named Jane, and her and Jane hit it off, and after a few days of talking she realizes that Jane has been stuck on the subway, not aging, just kind of like frozen in time since I believe it was the 1960s or 70s. I don't know why, I can't remember for sure, but it was before New York City's big blackout. I believe that is also based on a historical event, but she's been stuck, and basically August and her roommates band together to try to figure out how to get Jane off the train. They aren't like trying to make it that she stays in New York forever. They're just trying to get her off the train. At the same time, August's mom has been trying to solve the mystery of where August's Uncle Augie, who she is named after, disappeared to when August's mother was young. They also are trying to save Billy's Pancake Restaurant, which is like an iconic New York pancake restaurant that is going to go out of business because of skyrocketing rent costs. They're trying to save that. There is a lot going on in this book. But to kind of go a little more in depth about my thoughts, the first thing I want to talk to you guys about are the characters. So this book is told in third person. I can't remember what it, like the section of third person. I remember learning about this in English. Like I can literally picture my 9th grade English classroom and my teacher like writing it up on the board. Like I could picture her handwriting on the board talking about this, but I cannot remember which one it is. But it's the one where they only know about the main character. So they only know things that the main character knows. And the main character is August. I have to tell you, I have never related to a character more than I relate to August in this book. Actually, that's a little bit of a lie. I should rephrase that a little bit. When I first read To All the Boys I Loved Before, I found a lot of like I could relate to with Lara Jean. Lara Jean to this day is probably still one of my favorite book characters. August now is one of my favorite book characters as well. I just related to her so much, both with like her romantic history and where she is, and like not feeling like I fit in a lot of different places. Like I relate to August in a way that I didn't think I would when I first picked up One Last Stop. Like just so much about this book and about August I really liked and I really related to. And like even not like so much the relationship, but like August was raised by a single mom. My parents were divorced when I was young. I spent a lot of time with my single mom, so like that relationship felt very real. I don't know, I loved August. Like I just like I could probably talk about August for a long time, but I just can't articulate why I loved her so much, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I related to her so much. It's not really stated often in the book. It's stated a couple of times subtly, but you can even kind of tell in the cover. August is also supposed to be like a mid-sized girl, I believe. At least that's how I read her, and I relate to that because I do kind of fall in that mid-sized body type. So I feel like I related to August because of that. And like August ends up with like a hot ass love interest, which is also really cool to see, because although we do see that more, we still aren't seeing it as often as we should. Also, I know the cover is a little messed up. I accidentally slept with it in my bed one night instead of putting it on my bedside table. So there's that. But yeah, I loved August. The next character that there was the character Jane. Jane was a character I can see why August liked her, but I think that part of the reason I don't love Jane as much as I love some of the other characters in this book is that I think this book would have done very well if it was first person dual perspective. Even if it's not like a 50-50 dual perspective, but maybe it's like 35-25, 60-40, something like that, where we get a little bit of Jane's perspective into the book. I felt like I got to know Jane, but like I don't know, I think I really wanted to know the inner workings of Jane's brain more, and I didn't feel that when I read Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Like I was very fine. It was the same point of view where it was like third person, but they only knew what was going on in Alex's life. Whereas with this one, I wanted to know a little bit of the inner workings of Jane's brain. If Casey McQuiston did like a novella about Jane's life pre getting stuck on the subway, I actually probably would really enjoy that. There's just some things that I wish I could have known about Jane that like you can't find out when like you only know what August knows. Does that make sense? I really hope it does. Like I liked Jane, she was a good character, I just wanted more. And like I definitely, like, as much as I relate to August, did not develop a book crush on Jane. And then there was also the roommates. There was Mila. I'm 95% sure that's how you pronounce it. It's the only way I can think to pronounce it, but I've also never seen that name before, so I could be totally wrong. But Mila, Nico, and Wes were her roommates. Milo and Nico were together and Wes was single, but the four of them lived in the apartment together. I loved them. Like, I loved them as well. For side characters, Casey McQuiston did a very good job developing them, and I think she did even better with the side characters in One Last Stop than she did with the side characters in Red, White, and Royal Blue. And like, I see people on TikTok talking about the side characters on Red, White, and Royal Blue, like they are rememberable, and I feel like these characters are just as rememberable, or in my mind, even more rememberable. I loved Mila and Nico. They felt like a real couple. They felt believable. You could tell why they were in love. For like side characters, they had a decent amount of chemistry with them. And like, I actually wish like there could have been a few more scenes with them. And then my favorite roommate, like I loved August. Like if you didn't get that before, I loved August. My favorite of the four roommates though was 110% Wes. I loved Wes. Like if Casey McQuiston wants to make a spin-off novel about Wes and Isaiah, who was like their neighbor who Wes had a huge crush on, like let me know. I will be first in line. I will pre-order that book. I loved the two of them and I loved Wes. I loved them a lot. Wes is like one of those characters that if like he was the love interest in another book, I probably would have developed a book crush on him. Like he is just like one of my favorite male archetypes, if that makes sense. Like I loved him from the first page that I read him. He was like first read, love at first read. Is that a thing? I don't know, it should be, it's kind of funny. Anyways, that was how I feel about the characters. There are other characters, but those are the ones that like in my mind come around the most and stand out the most in my mind. The next thing I want to talk about is like the premise of the book itself. I am not a sci-fi fan at all.
Hi, editing Emma here. I just want to point out that since filming this video, I've seen it mentioned a lot that this book is not really considered a sci-fi necessarily as much as a time traveling genre, which I don't really know what that means in the realm of genres. I just want to say I am going to continue to refer to it as a sci-fi book, so if that bothers you, I'm really sorry, but that was how I genre'd it in my head, I guess. So if you know more about sci-fi and you disagree with that, I'm really sorry, but I just don't know a lot about that genre apparently. But yeah, I will let you get back to the video.
And this book was like a contemporary sci-fi magical realism type book, and I don't even know if it would fall under magical realism. I think it's more of like contemporary sci-fi or sci-fi contemporary, which would come first. Anyways, I really enjoyed this book. I was a little worried about reading it because like I said, I'm not a huge sci-fi person, and sometimes reading books that are sci-fi or fantasy or dystopian, I almost like want to see a movie first to really understand it, because I think I'm more of a visual learner than I am like a reading learner, if that makes sense. So sometimes those kind of books I need to see it first. I was really worried about reading this one, but I also really wanted to. So with all of that being said, I am like, if this is like the sci-fi readers, like if sci-fi readers like are up here, I'm like down here with my understanding of science. Like you can't even see where I understand science. I did like this premise. I was very intrigued by it. I thought that things that I had questions about, especially with this being more of like a new adult book and the things that typically come along with new adult books, I was a little confused as to how that might play out in this book, especially because I did see that some stuff that falls into that did happen in the book before reading the book. I felt like Casey McQuiston took the time to flesh out stuff, so it did make sense. Like there's a piece about Jane, and I didn't make this a spoiler-free video, but I also didn't make it a spoiler video, so I don't want to get too in-depth about it, but there's something about Jane that like helps to make sense about how they can communicate when August is not on the train. Yeah, that's what I think I'm going to say about that. And then at the end, when it came to figuring everything out, I feel like Casey McQuiston did the research on it, but then explained it to the lowest common denominator, if that makes sense. I don't know if Casey McQuiston wrote this to kind of be like a sci-fi contemporary book. Maybe it's just because like I don't read anything that I'm classifying it as that, but it did feel like it had been written to be dumbed down to the lowest common denominator. Does that make sense? I feel like nothing about what I've said has made sense in this whole premise section. But at the end of the day, I do understand the ending of the book. And that was something that I was worried about. And then just some other thoughts that I did have about this book in general. I will say that I felt this way very similarly with Red, White, and Royal Blue as well, which is the other book by Casey McQuiston that I've read, is that I loved about 75 to 85% of both books. But at like the 75-85% area, depending on the book, it started to lose my focus. It became too long. And with both books, I ended up just skimming the last like 20 pages just so I could know what happened. But I lost the want to finish the book, and I just wanted to finish it in order to finish it. And I felt that way with Red, White, and Royal Blue when I read that back in November. I don't think I did a wrap up, so I don't think you guys knew that. But that was very much kind of how I felt with that book, and it's kind of how I felt with this one. It wasn't as bad. I think I made it a little longer before I was like, yeah, I'm ready for this to be done. Like there was like a period, I think there was like a 3-month period of time at the end of the book that I was like, I don't care. I don't care about these 3 months. Like I just want to know how it ends at this point. And that was something, I think that's just the way, that's just one of those things that I think no matter what, me and Casey McQuiston's writing are never going to get to, but I will continue to read her books and just struggle at the end, because I think she does such a great job fleshing out books that I don't necessarily know if I need them fleshed out the way that she fleshes them out, if that makes sense. Like it's a great thing that she does, but like I'm ready to move on. Overall, I would recommend this book. I gave it a 4.5 star on my reading spreadsheet and a 4 star on Goodreads because they don't let you do half stars. Overall, I liked it. I would recommend it to people who are maybe light sci-fi readers, contemporary readers, or people who love women-loving women books. And let's bring back up the bingo sheet. As you can see, this is where we left it. I am going to cover the square of new favorite character because My Girl August is probably going to be my favorite book or my favorite character I read all year. So that leaves us with another square full. So now on top of what we had before, we now have 3 squares on the horizontal 5th row. We also now have 4 squares up the middle row, and all the other ones we had before. We're really kind of hanging out in the bottom of this board, which I think is interesting. That is kind of where we are with Wrap Up Bingo. That's how I felt with my one book I read in July. I'm hopefully going to read more books in August and we can have a better wrap up in August. But yeah, if you read One Last Stop, let me know what you thought of it. I would love to hear in the comments down below. I hope you guys had a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, rollers. Oh my god. Let me get my notes. In the month of January, or that's not what I want to say. But, where was I going? Oh yeah. They were a very cute my foot's asleep. What was I gonna talk about next?